this no button actually has a website address?
I love that. We're going to have to pull that
See
thing
if
up.
there's any more to get.
All right, I'm ready. Hey
Never.
everyone, welcome to episode number 3 of this podcast, television program, show thing that we're doing. We're super excited about these. We are learning right now how to do this. And this one I'm pretty excited about in a way, but also a little nervous about in a way, because this episode we're going to dig into something that we have a lot of experience doing, but have not perfected yet, which is working together in businesses, or just working together as a couple, or even as a family. We're going to dig into that, right?
That's the word out on the street. That is what we're talking about today.
Now we did add something to what we've got here, which is this button right here, which when you press this, it says no in a lot of different ways. So hopefully we don't have to use that. I guess we'll find out. I should put it over here. I'm not sure you should have authority over the no button. Everyone's waiting for you to press it. Don't do it. All right, before we get started though, I want to do something that I think we might start doing. I'm not sure. It's called the bee or not the bee. You want to explain to them what this is?
Well, the Babylon bee is...
Yeah, what is the Babylon bee?
Is satire. Is that how you...
Satire.
Satire.
Yep.
About the news. They make up news articles. What is it, babylonbee.com?
Don't look at my screen.
Why? You don't even have it up there.
No, but I have something you're not supposed to see.
Oh, I can't read it.
So we've got this idea where we're going to do the bee or not the bee. And I've got, if you don't know what the Babylon bee is, by the way, you need to go check out the website. It is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic satire website. It's hilarious. And they have these articles on there that are ridiculous, but they write it in a way where it's kind of pretending to be real, but it's a satire article. So I've got a bunch of article headlines here, and some of them are real, and some of them are the Babylon bee. And I'm going to read a couple of these, and Prudence here is going to tell us whether it's the bee or not. So if it's not, it means that it's a real news article headline. And if it's the bee, it means it's a satire. So we're going to see if Prudence can tell the difference. You ready?
Yeah.
You got your best discernment cap on?
Is getting more and more tough to figure out
it
that
is.
in the news.
Okay, first one. Here's the headline. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Teenager fined 100 pounds for feeding a chip to a pigeon. Babylon bee or not?
I think that's true.
Teenager fined 100 pounds for feeding a chip to a pigeon. Babylon bee or not? You're
I
saying
think
it's a
not.
real article.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. It is a real article. It was published by ITV News and the BBC.
100 pounds? That's like $150.
It is,
here
yeah.
in the US.
I'm not sure the current exchange rates, but it's a lot of money for feeding a chip to a pigeon.
Pigeon. It just wanted a chip.
I guarantee you the pigeon is the real loser here. For sure. Okay, you ready for another one?
Yeah.
So far you're at 100%, but I'm not going to let you stop at a full 100%. So let's go for another one. All right. Canadian Zoo fined after taking bear out for ice cream date. Babylon bee or not?
It's definitely Babylon bee.
The last time, no.
What?
No, that was another real article written in The Guardian, Sky News, and CBC, which is a
Where
Canadian.
did they take it to ice cream? One of those yolk
I don't know.
rings?
I didn't
and it
actually-
picked its own flavor?
I didn't actually read it. Okay, we got two more. Okay, Here's the next one. Ready? Babylon Bee or not? 7 ways to cope now that you can't force people around you to wear masks.
Oh, that's definitely Babylon. Well,
So, let me read it again. 7 ways to cope now that you can't force people around you to wear masks. Babylon Bee or not?
I am gonna have to go with Babylon Bee, but this is really, really tight.
Really tight? It is a Babylon Bee article. 7 ways to cope now that you can't force people around you to wear masks.
Yep.
Okay, 2 more. Let's do 2 more.
Okay.
Okay, here's the next one. 18-year-old trying to file her taxes, wishing her teachers had spent less time in class teaching on polyqueer trans theory, files a lawsuit. An 18-year-old who's trying to file her taxes, wishing that her teachers had spent less time teaching on polyqueer trans theory, is filing a lawsuit against the school.
True.
That's a Babylon Bee, but that sounds very realistic. Okay, last one. Criminal farts so loudly he gives away his hiding place and is arrested while running from the police. True. Written about in the Independent and USA Today. Criminal farts so loudly he gives away his hiding place and is arrested.
That is
And
awful. I mean, it's
2 places wrote about that.
well, I'm sure the police officers are really having a laugh over that one.
Should not have had Taco Bell before stealing from the bank. Can you believe that's a real
so
article?
awful.
So you're actually better at this than I am. So I think we're gonna continue to do these because there are limitless headlines that sound like satire and limitless satire headlines that sound like they could be real. So let's do that. All right. So this episode is we're going to get into, if you didn't see the first 2 episodes, those were really about our journey. And in that journey, we talked a lot about the last 25 years we've been together, what we've done through our parenting, but a lot about what we've done in business. And as you know, if you've watched those, we have had a lot of experience in business and running businesses together. And what we found is that doing business together is super easy.
No.
No? We haven't?
No. N-O.
Well, doing business with me is super easy.
No.
No, it's not easy, actually. What we found is that doing business together as a married couple is not easy. And I think some people it's led to divorce.
I just wanted to do that.
In honor of Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, in honor of Rushy Boy.
That's probably super loud. Yeah, so let's just dig in. We've got some things that we want to talk about specifically around this, but we have worked together in business. We've worked separately. We've done separate things. We've worked together. And in a lot of ways, it's definitely easier to not work together. I think we can agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, it's not easy. It's easier to not work together. Because for one reason, you're around each other a lot, right? And so sometimes when you're around somebody too much, then they just really irritate you. That doesn't happen with Alice. She never irritates me. It's never happened. But I definitely can irritate her if I'm around her too much.
Yeah, this is true.
Oh my goodness. However, we do believe, at least I do, we're actually having a bit of a discussion about this before doing this, that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, God gives assignments to a couple. And if they can't figure out how to work together, they're not going to be able to complete that assignment. You're not necessarily 100% convinced that that happens all the time.
Well,
What do you think
I
about
think the assignment would be to develop a decent relationship with each other first off.
Yeah,
And then if you have kids, that
that's a
would be your
prerequisite.
second assignment is to figure out how to
Deal
do
with
the
those.
parenting thing
Deal with those
well.
rugrats.
And then let's see what comes next.
Yeah, so if you have children, then this is 100% true. Like you've got an assignment that you've been given together if you have children. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely have that, and you definitely have the assignment of the marriage itself. So those are definitely assignments given by God, very easy to prove that in Scripture. I mean, these are things that it's important to him. He wants it to be important to us as a couple. So those are given. And then on top of that, I believe that a lot of the time the Lord gives an assignment to a couple to accomplish something. I don't think this always happens, but I do believe it happens a lot of the time. And I do think most of the time it's never realized because the couple has never learned how to work together well enough to step into that assignment. You think that's fair?
Mm-hmm. Yep. What's the next question?
So, as we think about this, I guess the first thing we would say is you've got to get your priorities straight from a marriage parenting standpoint. So, relationship with the Lord first, relationship with your spouse second most important ministry, second most important focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then children. So, children aren't more important. Parenting them is not more important than your marriage. And then after children would be these other assignments. Now, I think a lot of times the Lord gives an assignment to one person, and the other person, their job in that marriage relationship is to figure out how to support them. I think that happens a lot.
And that's not to be confused with a calling, right?
It's not to be confused with the calling. Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, we each have gifts and things that we're gifted with, and we have to figure out what those are and develop those individually.
Right.
So, that would be the space and of who you were born to be, right?
Yeah.
Your individual pieces of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And an assignment is more of a job
Mm-hmm.
that goes on top of that, and then who you are individually fits into that.
Yeah. So, like, can you think of some examples of this? Like, one that comes to my mind right now is I feel like Prudence has an assignment. I mean, I think you feel this too. Has an assignment to write books, and you've written two. One's out and available, and one is almost out and available. One's called Deep Woods, and the next one is that's not quite out yet is called The Sound of Wings. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got an assignment to do that. And one of the things that I've heard from the Lord in my time with Him is actually that part of my assignment is to make sure she has what she needs to do that. So that's me supporting, learning. Part of what my job is to make sure she has what she needs to be able to complete her assignment, which is actually writing those books. And I think there's going to be a lot more than just supernatural thrillers. I guess we'll find out. And then there's a different kind of assignment that I feel like is given to us as a couple. So I feel like one example of that, there's several, but one example of that is actually this ministry here at Eagle Mountain called Kingdom Learning. So I believe that's an assignment that's been given to both of us. And when I spent time with the Lord, He was very clear with me that I was not to go off on my own and do that all on my own.
Because have you done that before?
I mean, in theory, it could have happened, but it didn't happen.
Well, a lot of
Expand on that, babe.
times in our relationships, one of us will be more of a driver of things than the other.
Yeah.
So the person that loves to get into the new different situations or jobs or careers or it just whatever it is that comes is always got all this energy to do it, and maybe the other person doesn't so much.
Yeah.
And they're not, like, they're just comfortable at home with their little snuggly blanket. And
Is it weighted? That's like a popular
it
thing
can
now,
be
weighted
weighted.
blankets.
It can be, if you've got enough strength to pick it up.
Yeah. So
It could
there's
be
this
considered your weights for the day, actually, if you have a weighted blanket.
just sleeping
It's
all
like,
day. I did my weights today.
I picked up my blanket and
I
we're
stayed in
good.
bed. doing my weights. So there's this analogy that you have, Prudence, that's super irritating, but I feel like it's kind of accurate. So it has to do with balloons. Can you explain that?
Yes. So when he comes up with a harebrained idea
No, a
that's
good
new,
idea.
well, he might think
I don't
it's good.
have, I have never, I'm going on record right now. I've never had a harebrained idea.
He's had lots of ideas
Oh
that have
my
hair on
goodness.
them.
Did you just say I've had lots of ideas with hair on them?
Yes. Okay.
Oh my goodness. What?
And I know that
Offended.
whatever one of us decides to do or get into, or the other one is gonna
Drug
have
in.
to be a participant,
Yeah.
typically speaking, of support in some way.
Yeah.
So he generates this new idea and then broadcasts it, and I just go to town looking for all the reasons why we shouldn't do it.
Yes.
And then, anyway, so I call that he blows up the balloon, and that's the idea. And then I see if I can try to pop it. And if I can't pop it, then we'll go with it.
It's a good thing I'm taller than her because I just have to hold them out of her.
Sometimes it feels like that's the case.
Because you're pretty aggressive with your balloon popping. I
Well,
call it a wet
sometimes
blanket
it's just a
sometimes.
lot easier to, defeat the idea. And this may sound like it's really super negative, but it's not. It's just the way we help each other
Well, here's the thing.
find the holes.
To someone like me, it can be super frustrating to have someone like her running around with a giant knitting needle trying to pop all my ideas. It's very irritating. But the thing is that I have learned that through mistakes, that if I don't pay attention to that and she pops my balloon and then I take my deflated rubber balloon and try to do the idea anyway, even after she said, hey, this is a bad idea, don't be a doofus, and then I do it, it doesn't work. Like, it's hard enough when we're in agreement that it's a good idea to make things work. So I've really learned over the last 25 years I need to trust it, even though it can be very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You big grump.
I don't do things just to, be negative about them. I don't like taking risk.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So, how have you learned, or what do you think about this with regards to the. So, I think if you just were like not mature, you would pop every balloon. Is that fair?
Oh, for sure.
So, how
Most
is it
likely.
for you when you're like, gosh, I can't really pop this balloon, but I'd rather not take the risk anyway? Like, maybe this is an okay idea, but I'd still rather not take the risk, right? Like, isn't it still uncomfortable for you to
It's,
try new things? And
oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. I'd rather not. I'd just rather not.
so I guess what I'm getting at is it takes maturity on your side to move forward with something, and it takes maturity on my side to listen when I have what I think is an incredible idea to continue to consider, you know, that what you're trying to do isn't just rain on
Oh,
my
I'm
great
just
idea.
trying to save us the pain of some future problem.
Yeah. But sometimes, sometimes what you have to do is not pop balloons.
Yeah, this is true. And we have several of those in the way of businesses and things that we're involved with that I was unsuccessful at popping. So,
And how are those going?
mm, well, I mean, they're going. They're going.
Wow, you're so optimistic. They're going really well. They're going super well. Let's be real. When almost everything fails, these things are going well, right?
Yeah. So, as you can see, Chris and I are pretty much complete opposites.
We are, which kind of leads us to that next point. Um, So one of the things that we've discovered is that literally no matter who you are, you're going to frustrate the other person. So you're going to be difficult to work with. So one of the things that we found is to be so critically important is learning who you are and learning how you interact with others and learning who the other person is and figuring out the different ways you need to communicate, the kind of language that you use, things like that, so that you can work together. Because no one is exactly the same. And it just so happens that the way God has put Prudence and me together is we are completely different. There's this actually a whole business that we have with an assessment and training and all kinds of things, and it's called the core identity. And we're not going to get into that right now, but on this assessment, we're literally opposite, like actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways that makes it really powerful because we complement each other. There's a lot of gaps that I have that she fills in, a lot of gaps she has that I fill in, but at the same time that rubs us the wrong way. So learning how to communicate and work with each other has been really super important. I would say knowing how to communicate is probably the most important thing, right? In making these things successful. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But also the 5 keys to successful that you want to talk about.
Yeah,
So that's also important.
yeah. Is that your subtle way of getting us to move forward?
Well,
Yeah, so we've got 5 keys to successfully work together through stuff like this. Um, let's dig into this. I feel like these are, there's way more than this, by the way, but I feel like these are the 5 things that stand out the most that we've learned as we've tried to, work in business together. And the first one is um, understanding that there's no such thing as perfect harmony. This has been really hard for me, by the way. This has been super hard for me because who I am, the way that God has designed me, I want harmony and alignment in our relationship. Like I want that connection. I don't want to be out of, um, harmony.
this is true. While me, on the other hand, can have that disunity of something and not be as affected by it, which,
Yeah,
paints me as this very cold hearted person sometimes, but I'm not really a cold hearted
you're not.
person. Nope.
What are you? Warm-hearted?
Yeah, I am.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Good. That's great. I'm glad. Do you have anything else to say on that?
Well, either way we look at it, I actually don't really love conflict at all.
Yeah.
Um, and you hate disunity. So while you can do conflict fairly well, you don't like the outcome that conflict can have. But
No.
I just don't like conflict
Right.
at all. So, um, understanding that you're just gonna have friction,
Yeah.
and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that a lot of people believe is that there's a path to no friction. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that there is always a path to less friction and there's always growth to be made in our communication and relationship. And we can get to the place eventually through maturity where we're really low on the friction scale. But at the end of the day, we're really different people and everyone is different, right? So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's a fantasy to believe that there's not going to be some kind of conflict. It doesn't mean,
Yeah.
and when I say conflict, I don't mean like some big giant fight.
No, and I think that that's one thing, even just like in society, is that we don't know how to disagree in an agreeable way,
Yeah,
and that same concept has to be within our marriage. We have to understand how to disagree about stuff in an agreeable way where it doesn't just break things to pieces every time you disagree on something.
Right. Yeah, I think that's huge, is understanding. And actually, I'm not super good at that. Is that what you were getting at? That I'm not super good at that. So it's really hard for somebody like me to feel like it's okay to disagree because I want that unity so badly. But the reality is that it's totally okay to disagree. Like,
Yeah,
you want to disagree in some
you a
ways.
lot of times will not be able to look at things objectively, and instead you take them in emotionally and
Yeah,
personally, and
yeah.
then that
It has happened once.
really blows up.
That's happened like half a time.
Where I'm just like, oh, this isn't, let's talk about this button, this no button, and this is the problem. It's here on the table. It's not a part of me. I don't necessarily have to touch it, but then you're like, oh, this is my friend. It's part of me. You see it right here?
Uh, hey, hey,
It's the
watch it.
differences how we.
Yeah, no, that's really true. That's really true, and it's been very difficult to learn that, and I'm not super good at it yet. But honestly, the more you can learn that, the more powerful you can come. Because one of the things, this is really super good point. So I've done a lot of consulting with companies, and I will come into companies sometimes, and then I'll talk to them, and they'll say something like, "Man, we just get along so well. We never have any problems. Like we go into our meetings, and everything is just like perfect. We never have any disagreements." Sometimes you see this in marriages or families or whatever, where they kind of say, "We never have any disagreements." That's a bad sign. And I'm not saying that handling disagreements poorly is okay, like having arguments and fights. But if you don't have any disagreements, you're not rising, right? Iron sharpens iron. That sharpening process means you're cutting against each other. You're going to come up with a better solution if you're pushing against each other and working through the disagreements to come to a better solution. But you got to be able to do it in a way where you're okay with it.
Yeah, where you're not like a bull in a china shop
Yeah.
trying to move through that problem.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the most difficult because it's just keeping your emotions in check.
Yeah. Super difficult at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so the first one, understand there's no such thing as perfect harmony. I think that's really super important. The second one is that space is important. So if you're married to someone and you're working with them and you're together like on your off time and 40 plus hours a week, which we're not. We work together on everything, but we're still not together like all day long every day because there's a lot of components to everything that we do. But when you're working together, you're together even more. And I think a lot of couples don't even get along when they don't see each other all the time. But oftentimes, when you're together more, frustrations bubble to the surface. So space is super important. It's important to everyone. It's very important to everyone, and it's more important to some people. And like in our relationship, it's definitely more important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So just why is space so important?
Because people wear me out. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're gonna be honest.
So you're saying it's not just me.
Well, I always tell you, don't feel special. Um, but it's just, I like people
Yeah.
and I like being around them, but it takes a lot of energy from me to input into um, that relationship.
Yeah.
So I get drained faster. It doesn't refuel me
Yeah.
to be around people. And so,
Space is super important.
yep.
So the thing is, I think that when we know that space is important and we pay attention to it, then I feel like the enemy works extra hard at removing it. Would you say that's fair? So
Mm-hmm.
just play it out. What happens to you when you get put into a situation where you just don't have any space?
I will withdraw in emotionally because that is where I could have control. If I have to be physically present too long with large amounts of people, then I'll just kind of shut down a little bit emotionally and get grouchy. I can
Yeah.
get grouchy.
So what do you do? What do you do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Just make sure that there's quality time um, spent away from at least large amounts of people. Um, just doing something that doesn't have to be emotionally spent into somebody else.
Right. So you're saying the only way is to be purposeful about it.
Oh yeah, especially if you have children or if they're homeschooled, it's even harder because everybody's together all the time,
Yeah.
and you literally just have to say, "Sorry guys, I'm out."
See you later.
Or
Yeah.
just leave the house if you can't stop people from coming in your room or something like that.
Yeah. Now I put a lot of effort into creating space for you as well. Can you talk to that? Like
Um,
for everything from writing to just needing to be away.
yeah, he does because he's more dominant in the driving area. So he does his best to try to protect a lot of that time.
Mm.
And will tell the kids to not bother me, and he'll take all their complaints or questions or whatever it is that they have. Um, and if I need like certain things done, then I can make checklists and things like that and hand them off, and then he makes sure that they get done. Um, but even as far as like just the writing or I do a lot of crafting type things or I don't even know what else, everything.
Stuff where
But
you can, your brain can work, but you don't have to be on for people. Yeah.
yeah, so or maybe I just need to go out of the house or whatnot. And it's definitely a lot easier when your kids are older and you don't have to have a babysitter all the time for
Yeah.
them.
But even when they're
So
not, it's super important. You got to
yeah,
make it happen though, right?
yep, you do. You have to be purposeful and you have to um, make sure and put space, planned space in between um, large parties and events and things and try not to stack it all in one
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's super easy to wear busyness as a badge, especially inside the church nowadays. And Christians love to talk about how busy they are. I mean, I think everybody does, but Christians love to talk about how busy they are. Oh, how are things going? Oh, we are so busy. Like, I, I think most time people are not lying about that. But I think that if you don't have space, if you don't create space for life to happen, then it won't, right? So space is super important. Okay,
You
so
mean that's the rest in the space.
the rest in the space.
It's really the rest that we're talking about
Yeah.
in between
What do you
stuff.
mean by that? The rest that we're talking about.
Well, we keep saying space, but that's just the marker
Right.
that's holding time open
Right.
for rest to happen and take place.
Right. So it's not just about not stacking things up, but it's about purposefully resting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's super important, and I think that does tie in with the culture of busyness that we have. And we're going to do a whole episode on the culture of busyness. Um, and, God cares about space, like so much so that it made it into the
You
top
mean
10.
rest?
Yes, rest. That it made it into, the top 10 commandments. Like it's important to him. So it needs to be important to us. Okay, so understand there's no such thing as perfect harmony. Make sure that you've got space and rest allocated. And then the third thing is consistency. And what we mean when we say consistency, at least what I think we mean, what I mean, what I think you mean, is understanding the things that are important and making sure that we have a rhythm to our life. Now, you don't always have rhythm, there's always exceptions. But because there's always exceptions, it's even more important to make sure you have a rhythm. So, this is one of the things that we've known, we've learned over the years a lot, and not done a good job doing well. And then, right? Did you say that's fair?
Having consistency.
Having consistency.
Mm, yeah, I think it depends on what it is. I think,
Give some examples.
well, I think like maybe having dinner together,
Mhm.
we've done pretty well at.
Yep.
Lots of families don't,
Yeah.
for various reasons. Um, Busyness probably,
Yeah.
or schedules that overlap.
Right.
And, I think we've tried to be consistent with taking vacations
Yep.
in our lives. Church has always been consistent. What else have we been consistent
Yeah,
in?
I think all of those things are super important. And the enemy wants to get in and kind of corrupt all of those things. He doesn't like consistency because, the Bible teaches us that, where our hearts are, where our money is, there our heart is, right? It's like what it talks about. But the underlying piece of that is like where we focus our time is where our heart's at. Because money is just a representation of time. So I really believe that what Scripture is talking about there is where your focus is, which is where you can spend your money. That's where your heart is. So with consistency, if you really have a focus of consistency in certain areas, then your heart naturally goes there. So for example, if we feel like it's important to have dinner together and we're consistent with that, then that becomes a part of our life and our heart focus is there. So one of the things we've not done a good job with consistency is things like prayer together, certain things like that. And we've had lots of success in that area for pockets. And then you kind of slack a little bit and you let a lot of exceptions happen. And then the enemy comes in there and fills it in with busyness. Like, have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that word picture where you like have the rocks in the sand, and if you put the sand in first and you put the rocks in, you can't fit all the rocks
You
in
mean in a jar?
in a jar. Yeah.
You forgot that in your word
Have you
picture.
seen this? What I'm talking about?
I have seen something similar.
Okay, so how it works is you've got a measure of sand and a measure of rock, big, huge rocks, and they both will fit in the jar. But if you put the sand in first and then the rocks, all the rocks won't fit in. But if you put the rocks in first and then pour the sand in, it all fits. So what I'm not saying is eliminate a bunch of stuff, but you have to have your priorities right. So those rocks are kind of represented by the big things that you got to have consistently. Like if a prayer life with your spouse is important, that's a big rock. That has to go into the jar first. And I believe that when you have your priorities in the right order and the consistency is there with these things that matter, so those are the big rocks, then you're able to actually add all of the sand. So God, in a way, gives you a supernatural ability to do those other things as well. But if you let the other things take priority, then it doesn't all fit. And what falls away are the things that you would have deemed are the right things to have consistency with. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I already talked about some of the
Deep
things that are
thoughts.
inconsistency.
Deep
So,
thoughts. Why do you think consistency is so important?
why do I think
Yeah,
it is?
why is it so important?
Well, because I like stabilized things. I like the same things often over and over. That's just my type of person.
Yeah,
So it just makes me feel safer. It makes me feel like I'm getting what I need to get done,
yeah,
and that I'm making progress.
right. Yeah, it's
Do
good.
you like consistency?
I do. The thing is that consistency doesn't feel like it's as critically important to me. So I have to be far more purposeful about it than you do. Would you say that's fair?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I've learned is that it's actually just as important. Maybe it might even be more. I don't know. But it's definitely just as important for me. But I haven't necessarily always recognized how important it is because of who I am. I'm okay going with the flow. Except for when you go with the flow, you miss those things. You just do. That's the sand and the rocks in the jar. So, for somebody that doesn't feel like consistency is important, what I'm trying to say is it's even more important for you to be paying attention to it because you don't naturally pay attention to it. Um, so, consistency is super important. So, you got understanding there's no such thing as perfect harmony. Space and rest are super important. Consistency is super important. And then the next one is shared vision is required. So when I say shared vision, what I mean is you and your spouse have to totally know where you're going. You can't be off. Now, you don't always have to be in perfect agreement. Sometimes the things that she wants to do or she feels are important are different than what I do. But we have to have a good understanding and then we have to have a shared vision of where we're going on the big things, or we're going to be working against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like maybe stagecoach horses or carriage horses,
Mm-hmm.
that pair. So that bar that connects them together
The yoke.
is really that shared vision. Because if that wasn't there, guess what? The horses probably would be like, "Boing,
Yeah.
I'm out. We're not doing this together."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, how much more powerful is it when you're working in collaboration, right? That's really what you're saying.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, that can be a definite stall um, to even get something started. If you don't have a shared vision with each other, it's going to be that much harder to just get your project or your whatever it is that you're wanting to do off the ground.
Yeah.
And then if you do, you're literally alone in it with no support,
Mm.
um, or very little support, maybe. But it's definitely not something that you're connected with, and it makes it hard. And I think that it's really easy to to I think that if you're working on something for the Lord, the devil does pull a lot of shenanigans with you
Yeah.
as a couple, to try to railroad one of you off to saying, "Oh, it's somebody else's vision," and one of you may have got the idea from the Lord in the first place, and it isn't necessarily both of you just didn't get whacked over the head with the idea.
Yeah. Head whacked.
So I think in our case, there's been a lot of things that you have wanted to get started in, and that I have been like, okay, whatever, it's your thing. And it has been your thing because you didn't really share that with me anyway. I think you would have had I wanted to be involved, but I didn't. So that was double.
Double what?
Double. I didn't want to be involved and you didn't ask me.
Double negative.
Yeah.
Balloon that was popped that I went ahead with.
Or maybe I didn't pop it. Maybe it was a good idea, but
You were just a grumpy,
no, maybe
stinky
the
pants.
season of life wasn't there for me. You know, when you're raising
Right.
little children, that is your thing at the time.
Right. Like when I wanted to start a circus.
I don't remember that.
It's a good thing I never wanted to start a
Are you
circus.
talking about our kids?
You're the one that wanted to start that circus.
Yeah.
That's on you, babe.
So there's been plenty of times where we've experienced him having a vision for something, but I have not adopted it, and that has made it difficult because he vacillates between me needing to be on board and supportive, and I'm like, hey, this is your thing.
Yeah. So what I think I hear you saying is that's definitely not ideal. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not. Depends on what the project or new adventure is,
Yeah.
really. Because there are ways that we can support each other.
Right.
Um,
So you're not saying that it's always 100% required that we have shared vision on a particular thing, but we have to have a shared vision and understanding where we're going. That's what you're saying, right?
I would say so, for
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I
Yeah.
completely think that's required.
Yeah, you both have to understand what the destination is, if there is one, or at least
Right.
the trajectory.
And we got to go back up to the original stuff we were talking about, where you've got to be able to understand each other to a degree and be in alignment to a degree to where you're not off on your own on something that God's asked the two of you to do. But I think a lot of times couples haven't done the work to get in harmony, so they go off on their own because maybe the Lord is calling them, but they're going into an area where they're supposed to be in alignment with their spouse, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that this is definitely much, 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 much more important if you're doing something in ministry together.
Yeah. You're
Um,
saying I could easily be a diesel mechanic without having shared
mm-hmm.
vision from you. But if God asks us to start a ministry like Kingdom Learning inside Eagle Mountain, and we don't have, He's asked us to do it, but we don't have shared vision on it because we're out of alignment in some way, we're not going to be super effective at doing what He asks.
Yeah, it'll be like half your engine is working.
Yeah.
And I feel like that ministry, that emotional side is going to get hit a lot harder.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're going to have your spouse to be supportive in the absolute best way possible.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're working with each other.
Yeah.
It means that you're on the same page and
Yeah.
can help
Yeah, absolutely.
somehow.
Absolutely. Okay, last one on the five things. Understand there's no such thing as perfect harmony. Space and rest are important. Consistency is important. Shared vision is totally required, or an understanding of that. And then I feel like the last one is kind of obvious, and it's tied into the second one, but it's important to play as hard as you work. So I feel like a lot of times couples get very focused on their vision, and they do that well, and they have absolutely no idea how to enjoy life together.
Mm-hmm. Get busy, caught up working, and the work becomes that connection,
Yeah,
and then it's just that's what your relationship is. It's just work, 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 work.
yeah,
Then you need a break from your work, and you don't want to see each other
yeah,
because you represent work.
right. I feel
So,
like you got more to say on that.
what do you do? What do you like to do for play?
Me specifically,
Well,
or are you just saying people need to understand what they need to do for play? I think it's really tempting. I've seen this in ministry a lot to almost feel guilty with the relaxing, the rest, and the play. I mean, you've seen that a lot, right?
well,
Too,
have
right?
you felt that?
Maybe. Have
Hmm.
you felt that?
You felt that. So you can
What are
talk
you
about how
what are you getting
you
what are you
felt
getting
that.
at? I have had periods in my life that I'm learning about, but I've definitely had periods in my life where I felt like um, resting and playing and having fun actually are going against what God wants. That's what you're talking about, and that really what He wants is just me to like. Well, actually, you don't really think about it like that. You don't really take time to think about it. You just feel guilty when you're not working. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Or bringing work
Play.
into the space where you're not supposed to be working,
Yeah.
which I get onto you a lot about that.
I mean, I did that one time.
Afraid not. I'm afraid it's been more than once.
Yeah, so this is one of those super challenging things. So I have spent a lot of time and effort trying to learn how to balance all of that. Because being who we are and involved with the things that we're involved with in these different businesses and all this different stuff, you can get to a spot where you're literally tethered to whatever, and you can't escape it, and you're tied into that 100% of the time. And there's always demands, right? So, like, you're never actually ahead. You never can get it all done. There's always more to do in the various things. So I have not done a perfect job over the years, always compartmentalizing that. So that kind of takes us to that last point in there, which is compartmentalizing to some degree. So there's a time where you are solely focused, and then there's a time on the work side, and then there's a time where you need to be solely focused on the play side. And that's really what you're getting at, right?
Yes, but I think play and rest can be interchangeable. Um, of course, if you have kids and you own businesses and you are working together as husband and wife, I think it even becomes more challenging.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, because for us, I mean, we've had the kids home as homeschooling and
Right.
also owned businesses and are working together.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time
Right.
together with work
Yeah.
and work and work. And so it's really, it becomes kind of, you have to be really intentional
Yeah.
about,
Very intentional.
no, we're not doing phones at the table.
Yeah. So, like, I definitely have not done this perfectly, and we're still learning all the time. But one of the things that we found is, like, for example, because of the way that we are, we have the luxury to go to the coast for the week in the RV, right? So that luxury, we're afforded that luxury because I can take the work with me on the trip. So here's where it gets really, where the enemy can get really sneaky. So on the one hand, the the life situation that we're in allows us to do things and play and spend time together where others couldn't. So that's a benefit and that's a blessing. And what's required with that is the ability to do work. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have that opportunity. So you're taking work with you into that sphere. And that's where the enemy likes to sneak in. He likes to push it a little bit more than he should. And no one can answer what that balance really should be. So,
No.
on the one hand, it is reasonable to be able to go to the coast for a week and take the work with, because that actually allows you to be able to do it. You wouldn't even be able to do it without that. But the enemy is going to say, but you got to do just a little bit more, but you got to do just a little bit more. So you have to be purposefully thinking about it the whole time and have like real hard, fast rules. Okay, awesome. I'm going to get up an hour before everyone else. I'm going to work for 2 hours, and then I'm turning this off for 6 hours. But you can't do that unless you're very purposeful about it. What do you think
Hmm.
about that?
What do I think
Yeah,
about?
what do you think about
I
that?
don't know. You were just telling us your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like I am, um, I try to remind you to not be working in off hours.
right.
And so that has to be something that you have to recognize I'm not being a nag on. I'm trying to help us
Yeah. So you
as a
got to have grace,
reminder.
right? Like you've got to have grace and understand that this is a requirement to be able to do this. And I have to have grace and understand that you're trying to help me um, be wise about all of the time
Mm-hmm.
commitments and decisions.
Yep.
So that all comes back to the shared vision, communication, all of those things that are critical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult. Like we've been purposeful about working on this for, I think, our whole marriage. Like we didn't know so much, back then, way long time ago, but we've always been purposeful about paying attention to these sort of things and been really working on this for a long time, yet we still have to focus on this. So I guess the last thing I would say is you're always going to be learning, and grace is always required. Like, you never get to where you're doing this kind of thing perfectly. There's always improvements to be made, and there's growth to happen, and
And things to apologize for.
things to apologize for, and just, all that stuff, And at the end of the day, without having grace for each other, you're not going to be able to do that.
That's correct.
So, all right, so let me recap. Those 5 keys to being successful: understand there's no such thing as perfect harmony, having space, rest, that's super important, consistency, super important, having that shared vision is absolutely required, and remembering to play just as hard as you work. It's actually absolutely critical. And in order to do that, what we found is you've got to be purposeful about compartmentalizing it. You really do. So, it just a nutshell.
And it is harder, I think, for women to do that sometimes than men.
What do you mean by that?
Our emotional states. It's harder for us to
Compartmentalize
stop.
specifically?
To not mix everything together in a big old batch of cookies.
Yeah.
I think that we can do it on certain levels, but it does attack us more emotionally.
Yeah.
When it comes to shutting out things that happen that day.
So the key to that, what I would say is that you understanding about yourself is important, and also for your spouse to understand about that about you is important.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as we kind of wrap this up, and you think about this journey we've been on for 25 years, learning about how to do this, we're definitely still learning. Like, we're having discussions about this every day.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to learn
Yes, for
sure.
sure.
What would you say to people that are in different parts of this journey? Maybe they're learning how to do this brand new, they're just married, or maybe they've been doing it for 25 years like us, or 50. What would your final thoughts to them be?
I would say don't underestimate the importance of growing spiritually together, and having the prayer time. You're going to find that trying to instigate and maintain regular prayer may be one of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your relationship, because it is powerful and the devil knows it.
Yeah.
And he will offer all sorts of excuses on why you don't have time, somebody's in a bad mood. It's just like we've been through them all.
Yeah.
And we still get thrown plates at us all the time when it comes to this. So it is very vital for you to learn how to do that and implement it. And then if you can find people around you that can help encourage you, that are older, that understand it.
That's so good.
I would say definitely develop a relationship with them.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. Well, so thank you for hanging with us through this whole thing. We're going to dig into this type of topic more and more. I feel like with the way society is going, everybody's becoming an entrepreneur nowadays. Couples are going to be trying to learn how to work together more and more, and there's so much in this topic. But I guess at the end of the day, what we would really like to convey, and we just basically said this, Prudence, but what we would really like to convey is you've got to give yourself grace, and you have to be purposeful about doing this, or it absolutely will happen. The enemy loves to get in there and create wedges in relationships, because he knows that God has created people to work in unity together, and they're far more effective in unity. It's very biblical. It's throughout Scripture. You're far more powerful working in unity. So the enemy wants to corrupt that. So at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're purposeful about that, and give yourself grace.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Until next time, we'll see you later.